sponsored by our next Congressman, Adam Clayton Powell IV. So we welcome you here because Adam Clayton Powell IV is about issues and concerns of our community. That's why he's hosted this forum. Just a little bit about him. Adam Clayton Powell IV did his undergraduate work at Howard University. And from there, he went to Fordham for law school. And at the completion of his law degree, he did not take his abilities and issues to corporate America or to Wall Street, which he could have easily done. But he took his abilities and talents to the district attorney's office in the Bronx and served as an assistant district attorney. And I'll tell you why a little later. From there, he served on the city council on the east side of New York, a city council person. He worked for FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and from there he served the east side again as a state assemblyman. Now, if you notice, all of those positions that he held had to do with service and serving the people of our community and trying to resolve some of the issues and concerns that face us. And this is something that he wanted to do. But in my heart of heart, I believe that he could not really help himself because it's in his DNA. We know his father, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., and we know what kind of service. That's right, you can applaud. Yeah. And we know the kind of service that he rendered, not only to this community and to the state, but to this country. And I believe in the adage, and a lot of us do, that the fruit does not fall from the bush. And Adam Clayton Powell IV is a living example of that. So he's here today to host this forum, to understand your issues so he can better carry them when we elect him as Congressman of the 13th Congressional District, and we will do that. I present to you Adam Clayton Powell IV. Let's receive him well.
Thank you, Calvin Martin. Give it up. Deacon Calvin Martin, Convent Avenue Baptist Church, former chairman of the Board of Deacons, and also former past Grand Master, Prince Hall. Thank you all for coming. We truly appreciate your being here with us this afternoon. By the time you leave here, your rents will be half price. If you're looking for an apartment, you'll find something so cheap, you'll be like, telling the whole neighborhood. Obviously, I'm just kidding. That is not the purpose of this forum. The purpose of this forum is to give you information and to give you the tools that sometimes you lack because you don't have the information. And information is power. The purpose of this forum is to tell you my plan for housing once elected as your congressman. Some of the things we've done in the city council and the state assembly, as Brother Calvin Martin mentioned, and some of the things that need to be done in Congress with someone that has the commitment to do it. Because as you know, power without commitment means nothing. Experience without commitment means nothing. We've had a whole lot of politicians, give us lip service, but if the commitment is not there, it's useless. And so that's the purpose here. We hope that you can gather that information, take it with you, and spread the word, because you are, obviously we're preaching to a choir, some of you are very knowledgeable, but you are here to also help us to spread the word. We have a great panel we have assembled here today. These are not government bureaucrats. These are tenant leaders. All of them have been president of their development at one point or another. All of them are very active on the housing issues of today, whether it be Mitchell-Lama, NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority, Section 8, you name it, the various types of housing. And this here, Taino Towers, is a very unique setting. And if you live here, you may recognize one of the panelists. I'm not going to say who she is yet, but you will meet her if you are not from Taino very soon. She was a former president of this Taino Towers Association as well. So, without, and I just want to tell you that some of my own experience, because I actually lived in Mitchell-Lama my early adult years, when I was 21 years old, when I finished Howard University, as Calvin mentioned. I moved to Lakeview. You know Lakeview, 106, 107, between 5th Avenue and Madison. And I lived there for a few years. In fact, my son was born and was raised in Lakeview for a few years himself. And that's a Mitchellama. And I've seen also, since I left Lakeview and trying to find private apartments, whether it be a floor or an apartment inside a brownstone, or whether it be an apartment in a building, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. I don't know, when was the last time you were looking for an apartment? Or somebody very close to you, like a son or daughter living with you, who's looking for an apartment. It's nearly impossible to find an affordable apartment these days. If you don't make $100,000, it's nearly impossible to find an apartment these days, especially in northern Manhattan. I mean, Harlem's already been gentrified for the most part. And East Harlem is being gentrified. The one thing we have cover on, or the one, line in the sand, or the one area of protection we have against complete gentrification in East Harlem are the projects, the so-called developments, NYCHA. Because in this community, 50% of our residents live in public housing in NYCHA. But other than that, everything else is extremely difficult. I mean, my son was 27 years old, 26 years old, when he finally was able to move out and get his own place. And it's just a little tiny studio, which is also very expensive. But hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. You know the story. I mean, all of our kids, and that's my point. It affects our kids, not so much us. We have a place, but our kids, when they become 20, 22 years old, they want to be independent like we all did. They're not making the money to move on their own because there's nothing out there for them to move on their own. So it affects our kids. Some of them are living with you until they're 30, 35 years old, married with children, living with their parents. That's a fact. That's not, that's a fact. And it all ties into affordable housing, because New York City has always been a difficult area to find housing, always, for generations and generations, but now especially more so. And I believe it's because the income inequality that we have seen grow over the years. That's why those are my two priorities, my two top issues. If you pick up the campaign literature in the back, income inequality, affordable housing, they go hand in hand. Because if you don't have the money, then the housing is going to be unaffordable. If you have the money, the housing will be affordable, okay? And when we were growing up back in the 60s and 70s, in our households, in most places, we only had one income, right? Either a single head of household, or even if you had two parents, usually only one had a job and the other one stayed home and took care of the kids, because they could afford to do that in those days. One income. They could pay the rent, even buy a house if they wanted to. One income. They could buy a car. One income. They could send their kids to school with good clothes. And with one income, they could go out and celebrate an anniversary or celebrate a birthday and go on vacation every couple of years with one income, right? That's a fact. Nowadays, in a household, both parents are working, and some of them are working 2 jobs. So that's 3 incomes, 4 incomes, and they still can't do what our parents did in the 60s and the 70s. There's something wrong with our society, folks, and it's not just here, to be quite honest. This is not just in East Harlem or Northern Manhattan. This is all over the city. This is in many cities across the nation, where the rich are getting richer and the poor and the middle class is just barely struggling just to survive. So again, hopefully we can leave here with some information as to what you can do, and also some information as to what I'm going to do when I get elected to Congress. We have to fix the AMI formula, for example. AMI stands for Area Median Income. The AMI formula is what is used to compute affordability. The AMI formula is what is used when you see a new building going up and they say 20% affordable or 30% affordable. AMI is what they use to figure what's the income going to be to make it affordable. But unfortunately, the area that is using the area median income, it's not just us. It's the entire city of New York, along with Westchester County, along with Putnam County, along with Rockland County. How many people knew that? Yep. The area median income that is used for an East Harlem development includes the median income in Rockland County and Putnam County, which is about triple what it is in East Harlem. And that's wrong. And that can be changed. That can be changed. Actually, it has been changed in other areas. For example, Congresswoman Nita Lowey, Westchester County, in 1990, 26 years ago, and she was just a freshman or maybe a couple of terms, I don't know exactly, but Nita Lowey, I mean, that was 26 years ago. She's been in Congress more than 30 years, so that was one of her first things. She took Westchester County out of that area, okay? Right? And by the way, it's ironic, but they felt that New York City was bringing the rents too low for Westchester County. Can you believe that? So she took Westchester County out, and Westchester County now it's its own area median income. In 1996, then Congressman Ben Gilman, who tried, he used to represent Putnam County. And in 1998, Congressman Ben Gilman removed Putnam County from this area for its own computation of affordability. So now Putnam County, it's its own area for the AMI formula. The problem is that even though they removed Westchester and Putnam, we still have Westchester and Putnam to deal with. Because for some reason, Westchester, Putnam, and Rockland are still included in the New York City formula. So folks, that's something that as your congressman, I will change, you know, because I come straight out of Washington, D.C. You've seen the t-shirts, straight out of Compton, straight out of Harlem, that's straight out of Washington, D.C., okay? And so that's something that can be done. And we need to also make sure that we stop supporting these 100% luxury buildings. I mean, we don't need any more 100% luxury buildings. We don't. We have enough already, all right? So there's folks that are making good money. God bless them. There's enough already for them to stay here in East Harlem, to stay in Harlem, and live well. So we don't need any more 100% luxury housing. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of politicians say that. I mean, I've literally heard them say that, and then a couple of months later, I'm like, wow, because I've seen them then make deals and support a 100% luxury housing. That's ridiculous. So as a result, one of the last things that we need to, or one of the first things we need to do, but one of the things that we need to remember always is we have to register, and we have to participate, and we have to vote. I'm sure everybody here is registered to vote. I'm sure everybody's here because of your mere presence shows that you are interested and that you are active. But there may be people in your house or your neighbors that are not registered. And so please, in the back, we have voter registration forms. Take one with you if you know somebody that needs to register to vote. For this election, June 28th, they have until June 3rd. Friday, June 3rd is the last day to register for the June 28th Democratic primary. It's important, you know, the right to vote, it's something that a lot of our ancestors shed blood, sweat, and tears, okay, tears. And we take it so lightly. And we take it so lightly. And in New York, you know, we are the 49th state out of 50 with the lowest voting participation rates. Shameful, that's right. 49th out of 50, the lowest voting participation rates. Assembly districts that have 130,000 people, and only 4,000 or 5,000 come out to vote. So that half of that, 2,500, decides the election. You know, very few people. And every vote counts. Every vote counts. You know, in the Bronx 2 years ago, this is recent, there was an assembly district in the Bronx 2 years ago that was decided by 2 votes. 1, 2. That's it. Out of the 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 were cast, 2 votes decided. So obviously every vote counts. And we need to realize that we don't vote because we're happy. You know, the folk that marched down south in the 60s in the civil rights movement with Dr. King, they weren't happy with the political system. You don't vote because you like your politicians. You know, the folk down there were not voting because they like Bull O'Connor or because they like George Wallace, most racist governor this nation's probably ever seen. They didn't vote because they liked the politicians. They wanted to vote so they could put politicians in office and put people there that had the commitment, all right? And that's what we need to look at. We're not voting because, you know, I got a job or some politician gave me a $200 donation when I had my, you know, Father's Day event. That's not a reason to vote. You got to participate so you can change these dynamics of housing. Because what little is left by the way, because a lot of it's already gone, gentrified, rent control units gone. So what little is left, we have to draw a line and say enough. All right, and I've already said enough, so I'm going to introduce the panel, and they're going to introduce themselves even further. But quickly, I just want to say that we have Tony Taylor, who lives in Tracy Towers in the Bronx, which is, by the way, part of this district, and he was the president of the Tenant Association in Tracy Towers for many years. So give it up for Tony Taylor. And then we have the all-female, wonderful panelist, Carmen Ithia. She's part of the Michelama Residents Coalition. Carmen Ithia. Give it up. She's been dealing with these issues, folks, for a long time in the battlefields. Yvette Sayas, she's the one from Taino Towers, our local homegirl, Yvette Sayas, and she used to be the president of this development as well. And last but certainly not least, we have Mary Sweeting from Esplanade Gardens, a Michelama complex, and she also was president of our tenant co-op board for many, many years, and is still a very active tenant leader at Esplanade. So, without further ado, I want to have the panelists begin to introduce themselves. Shall we start with Shall we start with Mary? Okay, last will be first. Mary Sweeting, thank you.
Good afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to let's start again. Good afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Adam Clayton Powell for giving me the opportunity to come before you this afternoon to talk about one of the most precious commodities that we have here, and that's about housing. So I thank you. I thank you for you coming out to understand a little bit more about what you individually are going through. I am a resident of Esplanade Gardens, located in Harlem. That's an 1,872 unit Michelama regulated by HPD. We've been around for a long time, and we once were very much self-managed, and now we're managed by a management agency. That doesn't make it better, that doesn't make it worse, but it certainly raises questions when you look at the quality of life. I come today because my main concern is the issue pertaining to succession rights. Succession rights is almost like your inheritance. It's almost like your right based on the Constitution. But do we really understand it? Do we really know what it means? Yes, affordable housing, that's another big question. What is affordable housing? So I hope today that those of you that live currently in Michelama housing with stock certificates, that you understand a little bit more. If I can't answer, or if someone here can't answer, beg the question. Know what's going on. A lot of Michelama housing that existed in New York City no longer exists. Some of that will be talked about today. Some of them have bought out and become straight rentals. Does that make it better? Does that make it worse? It all depends. But the main concern today that I am here is because of succession rights. No one can afford, that I know, that currently reside in an affordable housing such as Esplanade Gardens, can afford to have their family members who have been residing with them and paying into the maintenance on the income affidavit be told in the event that the main leader passes away or move out, that they now, those family members, have to get out. So that's the concern, and that's why I'm here today. I'm here to talk about it. I'm here to hear what you have to say and find some solution. I also want to say in this opening that I had the honor and privilege of being present last Monday at a coalition forum held by the borough president. Won't get into too much about that because that's going to be her responsibility. But Letitia James was there also. And I want to let you know there is some grave concerns about how do we interpret succession rights and who's entitled to these apartments. Parents, if you have children, you know they can't move out, they're living with you, they're working, and you have them on the income affidavit. What are you going to do if you die? Are they entitled? Should they be forced out? What are we going to do? So those are the questions. I thank you again, and I hope that we have a fair exchange of ideas. share, because that's the only way we're gonna get things done. We can't just gossip, we can't just whisper, we gotta beg the questions and we gotta put them forthright to the people that can answer them. And I do hope that this forum with Adam Clayton Powell going forward, that he hears your concerns firsthand, not as an elected official that can make promises and haven't kept for many, many years, but to make a promise of commitment based on what he hears today. So again, I'm Mary Sweeting, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Hi, my name is Yvette Sayas. I'm a resident here of Taino Towers. I've been here since 1984. By show of hand, who does not understand English? ¿Quién no entiende inglés? Everybody understand the English? Cool? Okay, I'm going to speak a little Spanglish, just so that he doesn't feel left out of the conversation. Okay, so basically this is the deal. I worked with Adam for like 8 years. Out of those 8 years, I was his chief of staff. One of the things that I had to do in the office was I had to help people with their housing problems. Unfortunately, what it is that everybody that comes in, it's not just one problem or one rule, because there are different types of housing. So if you came into the office and you said that you were getting evicted or you were having some kind of problems with repairs, the first thing out of my mouth is, what type of housing do you live in? Because not every housing, development, tenement, private housing, luxury housing, they all don't function under the same rules. So in order for you to understand and for you to take messages to other people, you need to understand that when you go outside and you look at a house, if you look at a building, each one is under a different rule and regulations. Although, let me just say, the mother of all rules falls onto the federal, state, and city. Each one has its own laws. Each one has something to do with whatever you're living in. So if you're in a luxury, it's still habitability. What does that mean? You gotta have a working refrigerator. You gotta have running water. There are some things that are so natural to life that everybody needs. So it falls underneath that rule. Doesn't mean that people who live in NYCHA get that rule and the people who live in luxury don't get that rule. We all get that rule. So again, there are different rules that pertain to different housing that we live in. So what type of housing do we live in? If you understand, then you listen, because we'll all touch on some of this. So while Adam was speaking, I was just jotting down some notes and was just brainstorming. So, Michelama. Michelama is like a Section 8 that was brought up by in the 70s by a state senator and a state assembly member. And what they did was they got together, and what they said to the developers was this: listen, you make your housing affordable for the people, and we will pay a portion of that rent. And then 30% of someone's income went into taking care of this building. Now understand what your rent does. Your rent pays for maintenance, management, the boiler, the water, the electricity, everything that needs to be sustainable to life. A broken refrigerator, extermination, that's what your rent pays for. In addition to, if something breaks down, or if you want to do some kind of improvements, that's what your rent pays for. Understand that. When you pay rent, you're supposed to get something back. And if you're not getting everything that I told you, then you're being gypped. Okay? So, what happened? I would say 7 years ago, Adam, when we were in front of Schaumburg, right? Like 7 years ago. Everybody know where Schaumburg is? On 10th Street? Schaumburg was a Michelama. And then all hell broke loose, and there were all these Michelamas opting out. What happened in the 70s? In the 70s, Mitchell and Lama went and told the developers, be in this program for like 25, 30 years, 35 years. And after that, you did your job and you gave the community affordable housing. Then you can opt out of the program, which means they don't have to accept the Section 8 anymore. So what happened? All this started happening one by one, and everybody was like, I'm getting evicted. Oh my God, what's happening? What's happening? If you don't go to those tenant association meetings, you're not going to know what's happening. Because in order to know what's happening, there are tenant association meetings. And if you feel that those tenant association meetings are turning into, oh, this person's doing that and that person's doing this, then you bring it back to the problem and say, listen, I want to know what's happening outside of development, outside where we're all affected. Whatever happens in your apartment, then you take that up separately with management, or you talk to the TA in regards to that. Okay? Gee, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so that's what your rent pays for. And that's what Michelama happened. And then 7 years ago, the 25-year mark happened, and then they started opting out. And what did they do? They looked at the federal government. The government was like, oh my God, let me give these people a Section 8 voucher. Who knows what a Section 8 voucher is? We've heard of it. Okay? Excuse me? Yeah, it's, yeah. When you build that, you can specify. Let me just talk about okay. So what happened was that each person got a voucher. So with this voucher, you did one or two things. Either you took it with you and you moved somewhere else, another state, another apartment building, or you stood there with that voucher. Then it becomes an in-house voucher. You can't move. Unfortunately, a lot of things happen. I'm just a story. Person's in a 3-bedroom apartment. You only have 2 people on the lease, so you're only eligible for 2 people voucher. So management said, okay, no problem. Kept you on 3 vouchers. And these are things, because if you don't know, that's where they're going to get you. So they go, oh, I'm sorry, Section 8 cut you off because you only had 2 people on your voucher, and you living in a 3-bedroom, and you're supposed to be in a 2-bedroom. Sorry, there are no more 2-bedrooms, so bye-bye. No voucher, no apartment. You need to go to your TA meetings to figure these things out, because it's going to happen if you don't understand. Okay? Some people with vouchers move into those tenement buildings, let's say a 3-family house. Understand, you can move into a house, no problem, but you got no rights. That's on a city level. Anybody who owns a 3-family, 4-family, 5-family, those tenants, no rights. Any buildings with 6 units and less, you got no rights. I own a building, you come, I go and I tell you after your lease is done, you need to move out. You can take me to court. I got the justification of pushing you out. Little things like that we need to understand, so in order for us to keep what we have. Rent control. I was living in a rent control before I lived in Taino Towers. 2-bedroom, $55, HPD. Those apartments were pre-war, and they were given to other people with just a handwritten letter. Can't write any letters anymore to give anybody apartments these days, right? But I got that apartment because somebody wrote a letter and said, I'm giving this apartment to Yvette. Went to HPD, put that lease under my name. Whoever heard of that? Can't do that now. That's what Mary Sweetie was talking about, succession. How do you get the apartment? If you think that you're being slick and you're living on Section 8 and you take your kid off the lease because you don't want to pay, and then all of a sudden, God forbid, something happens to you, guess what? Your kid is out. It's out. Don't be slick. Rent ain't that high. In a lot of federally subsidized buildings, light and gas is included. Think about you living somewhere with light and gas and you got to pay for that. So that's 2 types. NYCHA, New York City housing, goes according to your rent. It goes according to your income. Back in the days, they used to have this thing called ceiling rent. I don't remember what the ceiling rent was. All I remember was anybody with $150,000, $200,000 were living in those apartments and paying the ceiling rent. I think it was like $700 and something. That's all they were paying. And the only reason why these people got away with it is because we allowed it. We didn't go to meetings. We weren't hip to what they were saying or doing. So they got richer and we got poorer. HDFC, Housing Development Funding Corp. That's a co-op. How do they become a co-op? HPD had their housing stock. Remember those tenements that we used to live in back in the days, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? Well, those buildings, the city didn't want to have them anymore. They didn't want to be landlords anymore. So what they did was they got different programs in regards to these apartments. So if you got anybody living in the HPD building right now, they could go into the tenants lease intro program. That's the TIL program. For $250, you can buy your apartment. However, unfortunately, when the city comes to those apartments, they're going to come with 3 programs. That's the TIL program, the one I just told you about, where you can own your apartment. The second one is the NRP programs. That's the Neighborhood Relocation Program. And the NEP program, that's the Neighborhood Entrepreneurs Program. What happens? You live in one of these buildings, these 3 organizations or whatever subcategories come to your meeting and they say, look, this is what we're offering. Unfortunately, the TIL people only go once. The other 2 go as many times because people don't understand and they don't catch home ownership. So then what happens? NEP, NRP keeps going, these housing stock go into the neighborhood community-based organizations, not-for-profit. Who are they? Youth Action, Hope Community. And I know you've heard of this, yes? By show of hands, have we heard of these organizations? Yes. So these organizations, not-for-profits, take these housing stock and they rehab them, right? They move you out, you come back to a brand spanking new apartment. But because you didn't catch the TIL, now you're a renter. Okay? NEP, NRP means you rent. If those people who caught on to the TIL part, they would be calling the city and saying, I want to know about TIL. I want to know about owning my apartment. In that sense, they move you out, and you come back into a spanking new building with money inside your operating costs, because when you're living in another building, you're paying rent. And what the city does is they take that rent money and they put it in the bank for you. For you. The city's giving you a brand new building, money in the bank so that you can pay anything that has to do with running the building, the oil, the management, the super, repairs, okay? And all the city does is ask you to go to these meetings to show you how to govern yourselves. And what does that mean? Tenant association meetings. You go, you listen, you say, listen, this is what's happening, this is how much money's in the bank. Same thing like in your house. Household budget. I gotta pay the rent, I gotta pay the light, I gotta pay the cable bill. Same thing, but in a larger scale. People are afraid of that. So that's the TIL, and once you go to a certain amount of time in the TIL program, then you turn into an HDFC, Housing Development Funding Corp. You got senior housing, and in the senior housing you have assisted living and non-assisted living. If you didn't know, and if you're 55 years old, even 50 years old, and you're permanently disabled, you're disabled. You're not working. Guess what? You're eligible to put in an application for senior housing. Now I know we're young and we don't want to live with the seniors, but when you don't have somewhere to live, that is an option. You got group homes. We had a group home here when this thing opened, but it was bad, you know. But you have group homes. Thank God for group homes. You have the shelter system. People got to live there for a little while and then they move on, right? Okay, so now you got private housing. That's the luxury housing. What's in there? You got condos and co-ops. But one question you should ask yourself is, why is it that every time I walk down the street, there's a new building going up, I know nothing about it, I know where to get the applications. Understand this also. If you're not connected, you're not going to know what is going up in your community and what you can apply for. So you got Community Board 11, 1664 Park Avenue. That's on 117th Street next to Demetrius Gardens. If you go in there, they'll tell you when applications are coming out. If you go online and you put Community Board 11 NYC, their calendar comes up, and guess what? There's this thing called land use, and all they talk about is land use in East Harlem. They have other committees, but we're talking about housing. You go to those land use meetings, and guess what happens there? You didn't even know. I didn't know until I started with you for Adam. They talk about what's going to happen in our community. And that corner, or what's happening right there in the Salvation Army, who knows what's happening there? That's getting knocked out. But if you go to the meetings in the community board, you will know when the next piece of housing is going to go up. You're going to know where the applications are. You're going to know if you can afford to live there and what you need to do to fix your credit or your life or whatever in order to get into those types of housing. You have Section 8. What kind of Section 8 we have? We have buildings that have Section 8. That means that's housing base, which means that Taino Towers is a Section base 8. Section base 8 base. You know what I mean, right? So that means that it goes according to my income. If I move out of my apartment, I got no Section 8. It stays in the apartment. Okay? You have portable vouchers. Those vouchers are given by the federal government in different ways. You can have domestic violence. You can have intimidated witness. You can have working vouchers. At one time, people were in the shelter system, and in order for them to qualify or get housing, they gave them what they call a voucher. It was like an enhanced voucher. So basically, my math is not good. Let's say the rent is like $100. They pay $70, you pay $30. The following year, theirs will go down a certain percent, and yours will go up. So then the next year, they'll only pay $90, and you pay $10 more. So until you can take care of the rent. Unfortunately, with that program, they never thought that somebody was going to get a raise. So you're in this program, you're on welfare, right? Then all of a sudden, they give you a $2 raise. Then welfare says, you're making too much money, so we're going to have to put something down of yours. But then when you go and you scratch for your money to pay your rent, you can't, because the voucher only gives you so much, and each year it keeps going down. So then what happens? Welfare cuts you off because you're earning a little too much, and the voucher people, they're going to cut you off because you're not on welfare. You need to be on welfare in order to have that. So everything is a catch-22. Everything is you need to ask questions and go to meetings in order to protect yourself. You have, vouchers. I need to stay there for a little second. Vouchers are not forever. Okay, you need to understand that. You may have a voucher, and you may have a part-time job or something like that, and all of a sudden if you make $1 more than what the voucher allows you, you got no more voucher. You can't go back, you can't get another voucher because that is closed. What other types of Section 8 is there? There's HAS, people who have AIDS. You have the working voucher, the portable voucher. Okay, so when we talk about private housing, you have condos. Condos you pay into. You got money, you pay into it. Co-ops, you pay into it. What's a co-op? Low-income co-op. 1199 and Franklin Plaza. Did you know that? It's a low-income co-op. They still take Section 8. So it's actually called mixed use, because there's a lot of different types of ways that they figure out people's rent because of your income, okay? And a lot of these buildings and developers, when they come inside and they sit at the round table with the people in the community, they go, listen, I'm gonna give you some with Section 8, I'm gonna give you some with, like, let's say $50,000 and above. So they start saying what type of income is going to be allowed, but if you don't go to these meetings, you're not going to know. We also have preferential rent. Oh my God, you better listen to this. So make believe I'm a landlord, right? And you have this thing called DHCR. That's the Department Housing Community Renewal Development. It's a state agency. And what this agency does is they say, you landlord, how much is that apartment? You need to register with me here. Okay, so I, as a landlord, go there and I say, listen, man, I got 10 apartments and I fixed them up and now I'm renting them out for $3,000. So I go to DHCR and I register it there at $3,000, right? Rent stabilization, once it gets to $2,500, it gets stabilized. What that means is that once it reaches $2,500 and the next time the rent goes up, it's not gonna be 2,500 anymore, it's gonna be a little bit more. So that means it's destabilized. That means I, as a landlord, can charge whatever I want in rent, okay? So me as a landlord, I go and I register my apartments for $3,000. You, new tenant, coming to me, say, I need an apartment. I go, how much do you make? You go, I make $20,000 a year. I'll be like, all right, listen, I'm gonna give you this apartment for, let's say, $600, $700. But I'm gonna give you preferential treatment, preferential lease. What does that mean? That means I'm giving you a preference. I like you. I'm gonna give it to you for that little bit of money. Understand now, here goes the twist. In DHCR, I have it for $3,000. Now everybody knows what the word gentrification means? That means that either money's coming into our community or color, one or the other, all right? Means the neighborhood's gonna change. So I, as a landlord, I'm sitting back, chilling, getting it $700, $800 here, whatever, and I see that the neighborhood is changing. And now I go, oh look, luxury housing right next to mine. Ms. Brown, your lease is up this year, and I just want to let you know that your rent is $3,500. And you are going to go to housing court. And you're going to go, wait, I was only paying $649, and now I got to pay $3,500. Why? That word preferential. That means that that rent only stays like that until the life of that lease. And if I so choose to, after the life of that lease, I can raise it. So if you live in one of these places, please look at your lease and see if it says preferential on there. Because you're one of those people. A lot of the apartments on 116th Street are preferential rent. And I feel sorry for those people there because once, the neighborhood starts gentrifying, all those people are going to have to move out and they don't even know it. They don't even know what's going to hit them. Rent stabilized. We already talked about rent stabilized. Those are apartments that we got from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And at $2,500, it gets destabilized. When Adam was in the state assembly, they were trying to raise it to $33,000, $3,500, the rent stabilization. Okay? So, contract rent. All right, that's cool. That's my time. I hope you understood what I was saying. And I wish you luck.
Okay. My name is Carmen Napier, and I've been with the Michelama Residents Coalition as a treasurer for about 25 years. I moved into my Michelama building in 1976, which is Upper West Side. My building is still called Hayward Towers. I'm in 175 West 90th Street. When I moved in there in 1976, we had all the buildings in my area were all Michelama buildings. Every one of them. They started building them in the early 70s. And it was beautiful. I mean, it was a very horrible neighborhood before the buildings went up. But then it became a very family-oriented neighborhood. Everybody knew each other, and everybody went to the same school, and you knew your next door, you knew your butcher, you knew your grocery store guy. It was a very friendly neighborhood to bring up your children, very safe at the same time. And then, as a Michelama Coalition, we fought for years and years because the bad part about the Michelama program was that they put it in black and white that after 20 years, the owners, they could buy out of the program. The reason why they didn't buy was the economic was bad. So they stuck. And I think also we went to lobbying a lot in Albany to try to keep the buildings in Michelama, but the politicians, half of them didn't understand what Michelama was, and they really didn't care. So when we started going out of the program, when the landlords, the business got better in the, I would say maybe in the late 90s, they started buying out, they started paying on their mortgage and becoming out of the program. We didn't have any help from any other politicians to try to keep these buildings in the program, okay? I tell you, we worked very hard to try to keep these buildings in the program. And the landlord was, HPD was just looking at the other side. And now, it wasn't only in Manhattan, this was happening in the Bronx, basically in Brooklyn, but basically they attacked Manhattan first, and then they went to basically to the Bronx, and to Brooklyn and Queens. So we, to make a long story short, every building in my area that was rental went out of the program, okay? Some buildings got better deals than others. My building and some buildings did well, a little bit better because we were well organized. We got top-notch lawyers, and they created a program called the Lab program, which it was a program built by HPD and the owners of the building, because like they were offering us enhanced vouchers. So if you didn't qualify for the enhanced vouchers, they gave you this LAP program, which is similar to the rent stabilizing law. But it just happened that certain buildings did the leases very airtight. We have a few buildings in the west side and in down lower Manhattan, which is very, very hard to make this lease very, very strong. So, but what I'm worried about, this enhanced vouchers that we got in our building, and all the buildings got enhanced vouchers, is because once you move out of this apartment, they make the fair market. And my issue right now has been for like the last couple of years, is Michelin issue is like, we're trying to see if they could pass a law where these buildings, these apartments don't become fair market. Let somebody else that's affordable go into this enhanced vouchers apartment, but they're not allowing that. So we're losing apartments every day. We're losing affordable apartment, and when our building went out of the program in 2004, they promised us that we were going to have affordable apartments, but we're not going to have affordable apartments, because if I move out of my apartment, it's going to go fair market. Within the next day, they're going to tear it up and make it into fair market. And that's my biggest issue with the program, how it went. And that we lost a lot of Michelin buildings because of that. We lost a lot of buildings. And we now have to fight for whatever little bit we have left. And if we ever build any more, it should be the model of Michelin model, because I think that was one of the greatest models that we ever had in the city, because it was affordable. The costs were affordable, the rentals were affordable, and you know, I believe in enhanced vouchers, but I believe in affordable rent. They shouldn't be enhanced vouchers. They should go back to affordable rent, where you can pay your own rent working. We don't want this Section 8 over our head all the time, where if you make $2, they raise $1. You know, we want like enhanced. When we had the Michelin was Section 236, you pay rent, yeah, but they didn't raise your rent that high. But that's, you know, one of the things that we need to work on is to keep affordable housing. I understand that the new buildings that they're doing, they made it so like low income could afford to it, because they made it where you have to make $40,000. Not everybody makes $40,000. People in the South Bronx don't make $40,000. They make $25,000. Right. Where are you going to have these people? In shelters. Because they cannot afford the rents that are supposed to be affordable for tenants. So I think if I'm not mistaken, they changed it and they dumped it down to like $25,000, which it makes sense. Because you have a lot of people who still make that income. And I think they all should be living in affordable housing. You know, that's our intake of Michelin Residents Coalition, that they should make affordable housing across the board for every income. Not just for people who make $40,000 or $50,000, because not everybody makes that, you know. And I'm here to answer any questions about Michelin Coalition, who we are and what we do. We've been an assistant for over 25 years. Adam Clayton Powell was one of our first creator with Bob Willis that passed away. And, you know, and we want to keep more apartments available for everybody, not just for people who make over 40, 50,000, which I think is unfair.
This is a tough act to follow. They've given you guys a ton of information, 2 tons of information. And the one thing that I think they're saying is that Cy Sims commercial was for his stores an educated consumer is a wise consumer. So I think what we're telling you is you have to be educated. You just can't go to work, come home. Go to work, come home. And if there's a tenants meeting, well, I got something else to do. You can't do that. You have to be involved because we don't live there with you. We have our own. When I was president of the Tenant Association, people asked me, why are you doing this? I told them, I'm doing this because of my family. If I can do this and take care of my family and make sure you're living good, then you guys don't live good. And so it worked. I was able to beat the rent increase twice. I'm not going to tell you when I was paying. When I first moved, I moved into Tracy Towers in 1972. I was the 6th family to move in. It was a New York State Michelin under the guidelines of affordable housing. Somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s, New York State turned it over to New York City Michelin under the guise, under the auspices of HPD. And it became a trial of wills. The Section 8s they talk about, you have to know, like any benefit that you get has to be renewed on a yearly, well, that has to be renewed on a yearly basis. Nothing is permanent. Most Section 8s are not transferable because you might accept Section 8, but I said, I don't want to live with you anymore. I don't like the way you run your business, and I want to move into your apartment. Mr. Taylor, you don't take Section 8. So you have to know that. 2 or 3 years ago, there was a freeze on Section 8 in New York City. They weren't giving it. HPD said, we'll make exceptions. And they gave exception Section 8s, but again, it's non-transferable. You cannot take a Section 8 here in New York City and move to Miami. It's only good for where you live. But you need to know these things. I found out at a previous meeting with Adam that he wrote the SCREE law. How many of you know what SCREE is? All right, for those of you who don't know, SCREE is a senior citizen rent exempt form that allows you that you can't pay more than 30% of your income towards rent. And we'll freeze it at whatever the lower rate is. However, it's renewable every year. You have to qualify every year. DRE, you know what DRE is? Yeah. All right. DRE is the same thing. But you have to know, if you don't know the benefits that you can get as a citizen, you're hurting yourself. The best question you can ask is who, what, where, when, and how. Can I get my rent lower? Can I get any kind of help? We have to know this, because if you know this, and I'm pointing to you, young man, right there, sitting like this, if you know this, you make it easier for your family. All right? And to make it easier for your family, you'll get to roll over to everybody around you. Now, you've heard enough with me, the young ladies. Let's hear questions from you guys.
Get up for this panel. Thank you. Thank you all very much. We're going to open it up to the public in a minute, and we will get you all in your questions and your concerns, and we will be out before 4. Couple of ground rules. Please don't give 5-10-minute speeches, all right? Just ask a question, make a brief comment if you like, or a concern. That's fine. Also, please don't ask a question that just relates to you and only to you. You can do that after. We'll be around. We're not making a beeline to the door when we break. You can talk to panelists individually. So please ask a question that everybody else can relate to. So don't say in my apartment and this and that and the other. So, I mean, try to say something that, again, everybody can learn from and everybody can relate to. Constituent services is something you should also, you should try to talk to us again after the meeting. But I just want to point out a couple of things. I know that Yvette spoke very well. Again, I just want to congratulate this panel. You guys were wonderful. Mary Sweeting from Esplanade Gardens. Wow. Esplanade is on 146, 147, and Clayton, Powell Jr. Boulevard, Atlantic Avenue. And she's been a tenant leader there for forever and was the president from 1993 to 2003. Yvette Zayas from right here, Taino Towers, East Harlem. She was the president of the Tenant Association here. Working with me, and she, now you can see why she was my chief of staff. She knows it, inside and out. Every detail, everything needs to be done. We took care of a lot of people. Went to court, and prevented a lot of evictions. I mean, folk that already had their furniture out on the street practically were able to help them to get back in. And of course, Carmen Ithia, who's been with the Mitchell-Lama Residents Coalition, as she said, for 25 years. And she's still there, and I was there from the very beginning. And rest in peace, and now so many others are carrying on that wonderful organization, Mitchell-Lama Residents Coalition. If you're a Mitchell-Lama tenant, and even if you're not, you're welcome to partake with them. They have meetings regularly, and again, they're very, very active and up to date on all the changes in the laws and the regulations. Because part of the problem is that even when you know it all, 2 years later, you know very little. Because in 2 years, they can change the regulations on succession rights, like Mary Sweeting was saying. I mean, there was a time that just about anybody in your family could keep your apartment if you died, all right? Or if you left, divorced, whatever. Nowadays, that's not true. Nowadays, even your children are in peril. Nowadays, sometimes even a spouse, husband and wife, living together, both on the certificate and both on the income, and husband dies, the wife is in peril of losing the apartment unit. So these are things that change rapidly. And Tony Taylor, who again was one of the first, the sixth, one of the first tenants at Tracy Towers, the tallest buildings in the Bronx, 45 stories high. Those two towers that are, very imperial and majestic there on Mosholo Parkway. And he's been a tenant leader for all of those years since 1972. So thank you all. Thank you very much. Gracias. Appreciate all the information. And now we're going to put that information to good use. Just want to touch upon some other things also right before we open it up. Section 8, for example, and there are various certificates, as Yvette outlined, as some of you know, but Section 8 is something that has been under attack. I mean, I know that, again, I've been out of public office government for 6 years, at least directly, when I was in the Assembly. But even then, it was being frozen. So it may have been frozen 2 years now. It was frozen in the 2000s. It was frozen in the 90s. What happened on the Ronald Reagan folk was horrible. Ronald Reagan practically decimated the federal government's involvement in public housing. He eliminated it. If you recall, Section 8, for example, you only paid 25% of your income back in the day. When Ronald Reagan got into office, he immediately raised that to 30%. You remember that? You remember that? Section 8 was 25% of your income. Ronald Reagan is responsible for now it being 30% of your income. I mean, public housing, NYCHA, he took, the rug from under them. Public housing, what the federal government did with the New York City Housing Authority in the 1940s, in the 1950s, and in the 60s was wonderful. Talk about gentrification. That was gentrification back then, all right? Because to build all those developments like Jefferson, from First Avenue, Third Avenue, from 112 to 115, you know how many tenements they had to like raise? And how many, crews had to like take out the previous tenants? I mean, they were literally taking people out, taking the tenements out. Johnson houses continues from 3rd Avenue to, and you can keep going from 112, 115 all the way to Lenox, King houses. You know how many people and tenements were taken away? So that was gentrification. That was a step up. You know, everybody wanted to move into public housing. NYCHA was like, the dream come true. But unfortunately, the federal government took the money out. Ronald Reagan practically eliminated the federal government being in public housing, and that's how it began to decline slowly but surely, slowly but surely. So what we have to do, it's simple, it's not complicated. We have to get the federal government to put some skin back in the housing game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We have to go back to that time in the 1950s and 60s when the federal government said housing is a right, not a privilege. Housing is a right. And just like we can send our kids to public schools, we should be able to have families in public housing. And nowadays, even people that work, you know it and I know it, even people that work are living in shelters. I'm not talking about unemployed. People that work are living in shelters. Every morning they get up, they go to work, and every night they come back to the shelter to sleep. In the richest city in the world, in the richest nation on earth, that's despicable. That's truly appalling. And so we got to do something about that. I know people are cynical about you can't, because the Republicans in the Congress, they don't want this, they don't want that, and the other. But hey, this has been 35 years enough already. Again, it's time to change the dynamic. And if we unite together, yes, we can. Yes, we can change the dynamic. So, folks, it's up to you. Yes, it's up to you now. Please, your comments, your questions, your concerns to the panelists, to me, to anybody appropriately. Thank you.